All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of the New Printing Press, a podcast about church and technology and AI and all the good stuff that is being done with it, and maybe some of the bad stuff as well. It's good to have you with us. I'm Michael Whittle. I am one of the hosts here, also the co-founder of Pulpit AI, which is the producer, the presenter of this podcast. And I'm here with my friend and my co-founder here at Pulpit AI, Jake Sweetman. What's up, man?
Good to see you, brother. How are you?
I'm good. Okay, so like before jumping in, this is episode 1. So it's funny because we launched this thing, we put out a tweet, and we'll get into maybe just like the story of that.
You put out a tweet.
I put out a tweet. You're not even on Twitter. I've been trying to get you. I've been trying to get you to be on Twitter now for years, and you are spiritually healthier than me.
I remember you coming into the office the day after you did it, and you're like losing your mind because of how viral your tweet was going.
Yeah, it was,
which is pretty great.
It's one of those things that you can't plan for.
Right.
But what can I say? The Lord is with us, and he has anointed us. And so he caused it to go viral. No, I'm kidding. So, all right. So I guess, if you're listening to this, that means you follow us as a company. Maybe you use our product. Maybe you've came across us online. And so mostly you would hear or see me, because I'm kind of the one that spends my day making noise on the internet and talking about our product. And so people don't ever hear from you, because you have a real job, actually. You have a real important job. And so you are the lead pastor of C3 Los Angeles, also with a location in Nashville. Maybe just talk quickly. You and I met like 15 years ago, probably at this point. But maybe just share, people know maybe a bit about me, but maybe just share a bit about you, what you do, the church, all that good stuff.
Sure, yeah. Lead a church in LA with a site in Nashville as well. Been lead pastor here since 2015. Honestly, I'm doing what I feel like I was called to do since I was a kid. I've always, for as long as I can remember, having any serious desire about what I wanted to do for a living, it was always oriented around being a pastor. So I love what I get to do. Love the people that I get to lead out here in LA, kind of on a local level. And you and I have known each other for a really long time. Been in ministry together for pretty well most of the duration of our relationship, and have had kind of various expressions of like entrepreneurial endeavors that have led us to this point now, where we're getting to do this cool work with Pulpit AI. So it's a pleasure to be on the ride, and it's fun getting to do it together. So.
Yeah, it really is. It is. It's funny when people ask, like, how did this all happen? I'm like, well, we've kind of, I'm 38 now, which is wild. Which, by the way, was having coffee with a couple guys who we do some work with that were in town last week. And they were like, you're 38? Oh my gosh. And I was like, dude, I don't know if I'm supposed to take that as like a compliment or what, but
you definitely look like you're 30 and I look like I'm 45.
Yeah, right.
And I always say it's because I've been leading this church, so my face is aging.
Yeah. So, okay, I want to talk about the church thing for a second, because I've served you. So you're my pastor. So we're like friends. You're my pastor. We're also business partners, which is like a whole other podcast episode that we could probably have how to do that. I don't know. We figure it out every day. But But here's the thing. So I remember in Santa Monica, we were at a place called The Basement, Victorian, actually. Mm-hmm. It was a bar and restaurant. And I remember sitting there, and I remember you telling me, hey, we're going to start this church in Silver Lake in LA. Like, it's going to happen. And not that long after that, I think it was like 20 or 25 of us met in an apartment above a storage facility in Koreatown. And
Koreatown is like a little too generous. It was like a vacuous space in like East Hollywood.
Yes, just such a weird.
Koreatown actually has some like cool factor to it.
Yes, yeah. And man, it's funny because like I think we can say, oh, we planted a church, but we really kind of like tripped and fell and started
Yes.
one. Like we didn't do
Right.
any kind of like, hey,
Right.
this is how we're gonna plan and do this. It was kind of just like, here you go try it.
Yeah, I wished we had maybe done it differently, but by God's grace, we're still here and had some reasonable success so far. But we were working with what we had.
Exactly.
Which was a whole lot of stupidity and a bit of faith. So.
But honestly, it's cool. God has done some really amazing things in our church, from pre-COVID, not owning a venue and setting up and tearing down in 3 different locations, to during COVID, getting one venue that was permanent in LA, which is a miracle, and then buying a building. And I feel like that we've experienced a lot of the ups and downs of ministry together, like crazy periods of success or whatever, however we would define success. And then other moments of being like, are we doing anything right? You know, like, so we've lived a lot of that ministry life, even, during COVID, like looking at the church and looking at some of our focuses and going, okay, we thought this was success, or maybe this is how we measured success. But, I remember an evening in COVID, just like sitting on your back porch going like, okay, if we ever have a chance to rethink everything, not our beliefs or theology, but like the things that are important to
our
us,
practice. Yeah.
Now's the time. So maybe just talk about like quickly, like that process, like the church pre-COVID and then the church now, the focus, because I think that's been a huge part of the story.
Yeah, it's good. I think a big impetus for those kinds of conversations that we were having, and they certainly weren't unique to us. There are thousands and thousands of those kinds of conversations happening in the church across the West. The impetus for it, though, I think was the sad realization that maybe we had fewer Christians in our churches than we thought. So we had people that were in the church for good reasons, community, belonging, things like that. But not necessarily the right reason, the reason, which is being a disciple of Jesus, which means being committed to becoming like him, and believing and obeying what it is that he has to say. And so that's discipleship. And so that was a lot of the conversation that we were having. And in those conversations, we didn't necessarily have like answers in terms of like, here's how we do this better right away. I would say we've spent the better part of 2021 to even up till today, trying to chip away at that question of how do we keep getting better at discipling people, if indeed that is what Jesus has commanded us to do. And I do believe it is. And that's not anti-growth. That's not anti-big. I love the idea of a large growing church. I make no apologies for that being a desire. But the change up that happened in me, and I would say certainly in you and many others, was truly getting to the place where going, okay, that really is a byproduct of what we're supposed to be doing. And if that doesn't happen, that's okay as well. As long as we're faithful and successful, to use your word, in the things that Jesus tells us to do, then that is going to be what we're going to call a win. Now, I do think that if we're doing that well, God's going to entrust us with at least more people along the way. I might never be Craig Groeschel, but honestly, the way that guy lives, he's a machine. I don't know if I want to
be in the gym every single day.
Yeah. So
there's like like a Methodist or Episcopalian listening to this and it's like, who's Craig Groeschel? I love it. You know what I mean?
Sure. Great.
So good.
I love it. But you know what I'm saying. So that was the conversation. And I think that certainly that brought us into, it was the perfect marriage of like the conversation around discipleship and us as a church having to use technology more than we ever had before. That during the 2020, 2021 era, those two conversations crossed over with one another in a way that I don't think would have had the circumstances not been what they were, right? So like we're having to talk about digital ministry, we're having to talk about discipleship, and those two things kind of, I guess, kissed one another. And that's at least what started our journey to where we are now in terms of our use of tech. And I think by God's providence, we were already kind of thinking that way with some other projects that you and I were working on. Thinking back to the LA.church stuff and all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about that too, because like, we were sort of church shut down mid-March of 2020. We thought it was going to be a few weeks. And then, us in LA, it ended up being like, a very long time, 10 months. And I remember in June and July of 2020, and it's funny, there's all this talk about like technology and social media, but I remember like in the conversations we were having, because at the time my wife and I were serving as location pastors, so we were leading one of the locations of the church, and I remember our job really was just to call people and interact with them and text them and how are things going, what's going on, and
please don't leave.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. Are you okay? And especially in a place like LA, where it's like, you just have like a 24-year-old single dude who lives in a studio apartment.
He's like, I'm
stuck
out.
in his, exactly.
I'm moving to Florida.
Exactly. So like, we're just calling people, and all, basically our way of keeping in touch with people was talking and texting, and then like seeing what they were posting on social media.
Yes.
And I remember there would be so many times of us going, man, this is crazy. Like, what, like these people in our church, like we thought they were Christians, but they're posting this and they're posting that. So we just started a little podcast that was like us talking about cultural stuff that was happening. And we just kind of like went out there and just said, hey, this is kind of what happened this week in culture. Let's talk about it. How should Christians think about it? And that was a lot of fun. And that was kind of like our first thing of like, oh, how do we try and even think about discipling our church through this beyond just like a sermon?
Yep.
We then kind of spun up this little podcast network called Vast that we've been doing for the last 18 months or so. People always ask like, man, Pulpit AI like just started. It's like, no, we've been kind of grinding away at something, for the last couple of years. So we're doing this podcast network, and you started a podcast called Good Theology with the one and only Dr. David Campbell, who will be on this podcast at some point and who we love. And you guys were just talking theology. And I remember like there was obviously people listening from all over the world, but I remember always hearing from people in the church, like just our church members, how much they were loving it and how much they were learning. And I remember saying to you, I'm like, man, I think that you're basically having one-on-one discipleship conversations with a large majority of our church through this podcast.
Right.
Do you remember that happening? Did you even realize that was happening? Like,
it wasn't intentional necessarily. And if anything, I have that weird paradox of a personality where I love being the center of attention, but I also hate being in the limelight. I just constantly feel uncomfortable. But so because of that, with the podcast, I wouldn't really personally promote it a whole lot. I did never talk about it from like Sunday perspective in church services. Would rarely like post it on my own social media. So people kind of just started, I guess they found it. I don't know how they found it, but they did. I was more thinking of it like, this is kind of like my reach out to the world beyond my church. And now that's definitely inverted for me. I would say I treat it more now like a resource for the people in our church to go to and receive instruction from. So yeah. And I think it's a great tool for that because it does provide the opportunity. People have, a wild number of voices that they listen to every single week. And they only hear their pastor, for an hour a week or so, 4 times a month if they come every week, but it's probably less than that. It's just the reality of life. And so having an opportunity, and this isn't new, like when we were growing up, it was tape ministry and CDs.
Tapes. Yep. Yeah. Go out to the tape table and buy
tape table. Exactly. Except now it's free and it's really unscripted and off the cuff. At least my approach to it is very unscripted. So yeah. And it kind of gives an outlet too, to talk about some things, maybe go deeper into a message, dive into some theology that you wouldn't necessarily have time for on a Sunday, or maybe Sunday's just not the right venue for that. So.
Okay, so I want to like deviate away from our scheduled topic really quick and just jump a little bit deeper into something you said. So obviously, if you're listening, we have this company called Pulpit AI. We really are building out the AI for everything after you preach. So we want to be the place that pastors and church leaders go, and you upload your sermon, eventually your entire library of sermons, learn from those sermons, create content around them. Obviously, some people will use that for marketing purposes, which is great. We really believe that the pastor could and should be able to create discipleship material for their church from their sermons. So we're obviously believers in technology. I remember one day just coming to you and I said, hey, what if we did this? What if we were able to take a pastor's sermon and create all this type of associated content with it? We tried out a couple of products. There you have it. We sat down in the room that you're sitting in right now and said, I think we need to go all in on building this product to serve pastors. So we'll get to the AI part in a second. I want to go back to what you said, though, about like pastors and how many times a week people can hear their pastor speak. So like one of our big core beliefs here at Pulpit AI is that, the lead pastor, the local church pastor, should be the primary, if not one of the primary voices in the home of their church members.
Exactly.
Right? Can we just talk for a second about the importance of that? We live in a world now where there is so many online creators and theologians and teachers, and we love that and we support that, and we have friends that do that. But why do you think it is that the local church pastor should have such a strong formational voice of authority in the lives of their congregation beyond just on a Sunday? Like, why is that so important?
Two reasons. Number one is local context, and number two is community. And I'm intentionally saying it that way, putting the emphasis on unity. So first of all, let me just hit local context. When I write a message, I have kind of 6 sections that I'm thinking through. I first have my text, then I have how my text ties into at least one facet of the gospel, and that's my exegesis. And then I've got my application side over here, and there I've got my heart. Like, why does this text light my heart on fire? And then I've got my church. Why does this matter for my church? I've got our world. Why does this matter for the world that we live in? And then I have this section called our moment. And that is local context. It's not just that I'm saying something. It's that I'm saying something now to these people for a particular purpose. And there is a moment in our church. That moment could be determined by the calendar. Maybe we're in a season of church where we're focused on money because we're coming around our capital campaign, maybe whatever it is, right? Like there's something happening in our calendar that's determining that moment. It could be determined pastorally. I'm noticing, our team of pastors are noticing X, Y, and Z is coming up a lot in our discipleship conversations. So we need to speak into that from the platform. We're in a moment of time that warrants particular things to be spoken about from the pulpit on a Sunday. And so therefore, the local church pastor has a window to speak into the lives of their people that nobody on the internet can do. They just simply can't, because they're not in that moment. They're in their moment, right? And there's a lot of things that we can say, broadly speaking, that can be applicable and helpful. We believe in that, and I'm all for a digital ministry in that sense. So it's not that we don't want people to do that. It's just that it can't take the place simply because they're not occupying the same moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
The second thing is the community aspect. There's a lot of, every voice is an opinion, right? Like, and so sure, listen to all kinds of stuff, but if a community is really going to flourish, they need unity, and unity comes around a set of like commonly held beliefs and values. And so if you're mostly fed by this voice over here that values X, Y, and Z, and I value A, B, and C, sooner or later, those values are going to clash, and that's disruptive to the unity of a church. So I think you've got to be fully bought in as a member of a church in terms of, this is who we are, this is what we value. It's not that this is better than that, or this or that over there is better than this. It's just that this is what we're focused on. And so you need to be intentional about, this is the voice that God's put in my life. I do believe that's there's some providence involved in that, and some humility on our part to submit to who God places in our world to do that and perform that role. And so our unity as a church is going to come out of that choice to go, this is the primary voice. This is my shepherd. So I think those 2 reasons are really good reasons for why the local church pastor needs to be the primary voice. And having something like Pulpit AI to build discipleship material around, it serves both those emphases. Because even the discipleship stuff that I'm going to come up with based upon the sermon that I spoke in this moment, again, is just feeding into supporting whatever it is that we're focused on at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. And there's also an accountability factor too, right? Like, I know one of the things that you doing the podcast, you say like, oh, I don't like that kind of attention. Well, it's also because you're having conversations in this podcast that you wouldn't want to say anything in that context that could affect or hurt or confuse somebody who's in your church, right? And so there is this, I've always used the word like safety. There's like a safety that people have when consuming content from a local church pastor that's like, they're always in the back of their mind, hopefully going, I want the people in my church who hear this to not be confused or to not be taken off course. Like,
For me, it's not even the back of my mind, it's the front. I am thinking always through that grid of that. Even when I was thinking this is for, a broader reach, I never could shake just the fact that my church is my priority. This is who God has called me to. And so I'm always speaking through that filter. It's just the reality.
Yeah. Let's talk church and technology really quickly, kind of just as we get close to wrapping up here. So, obviously we've built a church in Los Angeles. We've done live stream locations. We've kind of run the gamut of using technology for a lot of the different things that you can do. We've done digital giving since really the very beginning. The digital giving was a thing. We've always been people that are not like afraid of technology.
Sure.
And then AI kind of comes on the scene, and I remember even sending you stuff and you being like, dude, this is insane. What is this new tool or what is that? And even myself. So like, how do you think about as a lead pastor or, a senior pastor, someone who leads a staff, and then you lead a team of volunteers and a team of pastors and preachers and all that kind of stuff. When you think about AI and technology, what would be like your limitations? Like how, and it doesn't need to be anything deep, but like, what is a good use of AI and something that is helpful? And what is a use of AI that if you found out someone on the team was doing, you'd be like, let's maybe pump the brakes there.
Oh man, gosh. I mean,
I'll give you an example that I saw recently of maybe a not so great use of AI.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so using AI to create like text messages that would like pastorally catch up with people.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So you're a group leader and you're like, okay, I've got my 12 or 15 people that are in my group, and like I'm going to, just like create a generic text message checking up on all my group with AI, right? Like probably not a great use of AI in pastoral ministry.
I don't love the idea of AI taking the role of personal interaction, whether that's guest follow-up or member engagement. I'm okay with it, like dispersing information, like if someone knows that they're talking to a bot for the purpose of getting information, I don't have any problem with that. I think that that's perfectly great. I think if someone thinks they're speaking to a person, but they're not, I don't like that. Let me just say that's not what I would have our church do. That's not something I would engage in. I love the uses for AI that we're exploring. I think being able to interact with the content that I've worked hard to produce so that I can get more out of it is really, really valuable. And to have the objective perspective of this computer's ability to analyze what I've written or what I've spoken is so, so powerful. I kind of equate it to looking in a mirror, right? Like when you're growing in preaching, you should, a lot of people do, and most of them should say their message out loud. And maybe they even say it for their spouse, like, give me some feedback. What sounds weird? What's not connecting? What's my tone like? Am I overemphasizing this idea, underemphasizing this other idea, whatever? And that's like, it's like preaching into a mirror. Like, tell me what needs to change here. I think AI is so great for that. It's a digital mirror where I'm being able to like be confronted with the reality of, the spinach in my teeth, or you know what, you've got a really great smile. You need to lean into that. I'm just using metaphor. So I love AI for those purposes. I think it's a really powerful tool. I think it's just a exponentially better version of what we've been trying to get Google to do for us for 20 years, in terms of maybe trying to find illustrations or whatever. I like using AI to find some illustrations. Hey, tell me a story that fits these parameters. And I found some amazing stories. Like, wow, this is a great, and I'll go research the story. I'm like, this is a true story. This is so great. And what a powerful image to bring into the sermon. It just made the sermon 20% better. Right. So I think there's all kinds of really powerful, really ethical uses of AI. And some of those other things, I think that's probably personal. I don't think there's necessarily something unethical about using a bot for people to engage with. It's not where I'm presently at. And I kind of reserve the right to, I guess, be persuaded one way or another. But it's not what I currently would use it for. So
Cool. Okay. So lastly, AI to write a sermon for you. Yes or no? This is the big debate. This is the big debate that everyone has been talking about and asking about, not even just us. Like that is, yes. that's the big deal. I will say this, in all the pastors that I have talked to, not even just that like use our platform, because I'm not outing anyone that uses our app. I just mean in general, more pastors are using ChatGPT for sermon prep than probably would ever admit it, or that most people would realize. And it's not, like you said, it's not writing a sermon, but it definitely is like, hey, help me with an illustration here, or help me take these points and alliterate them because, for whatever context I'm teaching in, that makes more sense, right? Yep. Where do you land on AI and sermon prep and sort of the idea of Holy Spirit research, human embodied is the popular word now, thought put into something, and like aid of a machine? Yeah.
I use it very minimally, but I have friends that use it a lot. So I would never go to AI to generate something for me. And maybe that's just a point of personal pride. I'm a purist when it comes to sermon writing. I think taking something like your notes and saying, hey, turn this section into 3 points of alliteration. Great. I don't see a problem with that. That's not robbing from the Spirit's role in preparing or generating your ideas. It's just helping you organize them. Even that model of preaching that I laid out before, like those 6 things that I try to include in a message, that's a model of organization that I was taught. And I'm going to do my best to work with that model. And I think using a computer to help you organize your thoughts is not a bad thing. If the computer is generating the ideas for you, if it's doing your exegesis, not only do I not think that's a good idea, but I also think you're selling yourself way short. I really do. Like there are textual links in the Gospel of Matthew that, like, as of now, I mean, AI is it's not finding those for me. It doesn't know to look for that. Maybe that day comes. I don't know. Right. And that's the kind of the open-ended question about a lot of this stuff. But I love the process of the hunt. It can help me find that stuff, but it can't give me the revelation. Like it might be, I guess it could get to the point where it could say like, hey, this word that you're looking for is found over here. And there's probably a textual link there. But it's not going to give me the revelation as to why that matters.
Yeah. And it takes the joy away from the treasure hunt, right? Like that's the thing. I mean,
yeah, but even then, right? Like there's tools that we use for the treasure hunt now, right? Like I've always had to use a shovel to dig that treasure. Before my shovel was Logos, before or whatever, like depending on what tools people use. And so AI is just another tool that's helping you on your treasure hunt. And I wasn't smart enough before. I don't read Greek. Like I didn't know that like Matthew's only using this Greek word these 2 times and that's connecting these 2 passages together. Like I need a tool to help me with that. And so AI can be a tool like that. But what the tool is not doing and hasn't done is it's not giving me the revelation. It's not showing me like, here's the application of that. Here's why that matters. And so that is a huge difference. Now, even in the tools that we've used for a long time, like Bible study software, we're reading the thoughts of other men and women. So we're reading their insights into the scripture and we're having a conversation with them to help us arrive at revelation and application that is applicable to the church that we are speaking to on a Sunday morning. AI is, at least as far as our use of it with Pulpit AI, like we are interacting with human ideas, and we're trying to go deeper with those ideas and make them even more useful for our local context.
Go deeper, organize, repurpose, right? Yeah, that's exactly. I think that's the key. Is it's like organizing and repurposing, and then as the platform grows, learning from, right? Like those are, I think, the things that we feel really called, problems that we feel called to solve, and that doesn't mean other people won't solve other problems, but for now, those are the problems that we really feel called to solve. That's really, really good. Well, dude, thanks for being on here this afternoon. This was a lot of fun. If you are listening, you can find Jake on Instagram at Jake Sweetman. Our church is C3 Los Angeles. You can't find him on Twitter because he still refuses to get on there. So he doesn't get to see all the problems that we cause on Twitter. But hey, reach out to us. Honestly, we are, we're just excited that if you're listening and you're a user, we're just honestly honored that you would use, this little thing that we've built, and reach out to us anytime, any questions, concerns, feedback, ideas. We want to hear from you. And this has been really good. Man, absolutely. I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll do this again. We're going to do this a lot, very regularly on this podcast, so it'll be fun.
Look forward to it.